Baldur's Gate 3 is packed with danger and high-risk adventures, but maybe in the moments in between all the adventure, you want to slow things down and start a relationship. But how do you choose in a game like Baldur's Gate 3 that has so many good romance options? Well, hopefully I can help you out. In this video, I'm going to break down the main romance options in Baldur's Gate 3, and I'm going to try to be scientific with this. So here's the criteria I'm going to use to rank these romances. First is character depth. Does the character have flaws, motivations, and an existence outside of the romance? Does the character grow and change over time? And is this growth independent of the romance and the protagonist? Next is emotional depth. Does the romance fit naturally with the plot? Does it shift and change over time in reaction to the overall story? Additionally, does the romance feel meaningful and deep, where maybe even it can feel like something is at risk and that the romance requires emotional investment? Finally, I'm going to talk about relationship pacing. Does the relationship feel forced, or as if it doesn't naturally fit with the story? Does the romance feel as if it's just been tacked on? Each of these areas I will rank on a scale of 1 to 5, so these will all be out of a total of 15. Let's get started. Up first, we have Minthara. Minthara is a drow who serves and is extremely committed to the absolute. When Minthara is first encountered, she can be hostile to the player, but later on, she can be encountered again in Act 2, where she can actually be saved and recruited. If saved and recruited, Minthara can be romanced by a character of any gender. Minthara has an appreciation for violence and displays of power. She dislikes kindness or things that she views as weakness. For her character depth, I gave Minthara a 3 out of 5. In comparison to other companions in Baldur's Gate 3, Minthara is not nearly as present as a companion. In all reality, for many players, Minthara may never even be recruited as a companion, depending on what choices are made earlier in the game. This definitely limits the number of interactions with her and the ability of the player to get to know her and to understand her motivations and history. I will say, for the time that Minthara is present, she's a very interesting character. She's someone who stands very confidently on her beliefs, but that doesn't mean that she isn't left questioning them or confused as the story continues. For the emotional depth of Minthara's romantic relationship, I gave it a 4 out of 5. Despite the more limited amount of time that Minthara's romance gets, there is quite a lot of depth and interesting content present. Minthara provides a unique perspective as a partner and companion. She's probably the most villainous of companions that can be romanced.
Until their sanctuary is found, I will take something precious from you every hour that passes. A trinket, a tongue, a limb.
This ensures that even a villainous player has a compatible romance option. On top of that, Minthara is a very intriguing character, with the screen time that she does get consistently revealing a character who is more complicated and more deep than one might actually initially think. For the pacing of Minthara's romance, I gave it a 3 out of 5. I only gave this romance a 3 for pacing because it does have much more spotty presence in the game than the majority of other romance options do. Minthara is not consistently involved in the story or as a party member, which does detract from this relationship feeling quite as full and well-paced as others in this game. This was a romance that made me realize how much the small, unique camp interactions and romance dialogue can contribute to the overall pacing and feeling of a romance. The absence of these things for parts of the game is felt here. And again, that's really just because Minthara is not a companion for as much of the game as really most of the other companions do end up being. Overall, I gave this romance a 10 out of 15. Next up is Halsin. Halsin is a wood elf and druid companion who can be recruited in Act 1. Halsin can be romanced by a character of any gender. He appreciates kindness and appreciation for the natural world, and he is opposed to cruelty or actions that might harm the natural world. For character depth, I gave Halsin a 4 out of 5. Halsin is brutal in combat, but very patient and kind in the way that he lives his life.
If I'm honest, the grove was too comfortable for my tastes. I felt removed from nature. I'll miss my books, that I can find all the wisdom they contain out here firsthand.
He is definitely one of the most level-headed companions that you'll recruit, which can certainly be refreshing due to how many more hot-headed companions there are. Halsin is very stable in his life and certain in who he is. He does not shift much throughout the story, which could make his journey feel a bit less fulfilling than that of other companions. For the emotional depth of Halsin's relationship, I gave it a 3 out of 5. Halsin's romance does not feel significantly deep or romantic, which is an interesting comparison to other romances in Baldur's Gate 3. Part of this is what I said before. Halsin is much more stable and mature than most companions. He's solid in where he is, and he isn't growing or changing much on this journey or in his relationship with you. That can leave things to feel a bit underwhelming when it comes to emotional depth. We don't see these characters grow together, grow closer in that way, right? Shifting and changing in the way that you see a lot of other relationships in this game do that. For the pacing of this relationship, I gave it a 3 out of 5. The pacing of the relationship is just okay, hence the 3 out of 5. It's not exceptional, the relationship doesn't shift and change much during the game, but it is pretty steady across the board. One thing that stood out to me that I do believe could impact how players feel about the depth and the pacing of the relationship with Halsin is that Halsin is not interested in being in a monogamous relationship with the player character. He will indicate that this just isn't something that he wants. Many of the other relationships in this game build to that big commitment to each other. The option to have a polyamorous relationship is great for any player that's interested in this. However, this could disappoint other players who pursue this relationship with different intentions for their character. Just something to be aware of. A lot of this at the end of the day is going to come down to what you want for your character, how you're playing the game. Overall, I gave Halsin's romance a 10 out of 15. Next up is Gale. Gale is a wizard with scholarly knowledge and a lot of life experience. Gale is inquisitive and always curious to learn and explore, no matter the dangers or the cost. Gale can be recruited in Act 1 and can be romanced by a character of any gender. Gale is a kind-hearted companion, especially appreciating when the player does good deeds and helps others, or when they can solve a conflict without excessive use of violence. Gale, being the nice dude that he is, really does not appreciate violence, excessive violence, violence in the place of diplomacy, and he does not like if someone is to criticize his goals or interests. I mean, really, who would like that? I think we can all understand why he doesn't like that. For Gale's character depth, I gave him a 4 out of 5. Gale attempts to portray himself as an all-wise and powerful wizard who's got it all together, while internally, he struggles with his past actions and decisions. Because of this, Gale can come off as overconfident and even stuck up.
Are you aware that after a period of excruciating gestation, it will turn us into mind flayers? It's a process known as ceremorphosis, and let me assure you, it is to be avoided.
The way that Gale communicates his outward personality can make it hard to commit to getting to know him better, which is unfortunate because Gale is a complicated and well-written character. It's just getting through that external surface. For the emotional depth of Gale's relationship, I gave it a 4 out of 5. From the jump, if you're going the romance route, Gale is very straight up and direct that he's into you, but there's much more under the surface to understand and to navigate if you're going to have a truly happy and healthy relationship. Because of Gale's history, romancing him is its own unique kind of work, helping him to understand relationships in a different way and navigate his internal issues takes the front seat when you're building a relationship together. For the pacing of this relationship, I gave it a 4 out of 5. I mentioned Gale can come off poorly when initially getting to know him. This is the main reason I scored the pacing the way that I did. It would be really easy to just bail because of the way that he acts. It's not necessarily a bad thing that he's written this way, but some people might avoid him altogether, not caring to get to know him because of this. I've been one of those people. I will admit, I dismissed this character just because I found him kind of obnoxious at first. These are just some things to think about when approaching this character. If his story intrigues you, if him as a character intrigues you, don't let that external edge turn you away, because he is a well-written character. Overall, I gave this relationship a 12 out of 15. Next up is Wyll. Wyll, also known as Blade of Frontiers, is a monster hunter who can first be encountered in Emerald Grove during Act 1. Wyll is a hero, through and through, who is passionate about protecting and caring for others. Wyll can be romanced by a character of any gender. As a heroic companion, Wyll appreciates acts of kindness and acts that defend or protect innocent people. He does not appreciate excessive violence or the refusal to assist those in need. For character depth, I gave Wyll a 4 out of 5. Wyll is a generous and kind individual. He places a lot of value in courage and standing up for those in need.
I finally saw the suffering wrought by the villains of the wild. The frontiers demanded a blade, and so I heeded.
He has built up his life to help others and stand up for his values, and it's admirable, no questions. Because this can dominate the majority of his interactions, he can feel a little bit one note, even though he's an admirable character. For the emotional depth of Wyll's relationship, I gave it a 4 out of 5. Wyll's romance is honestly more wholesome and sweet than video game romances often are. Wyll is very romantic in approaching his relationship, and the relationship reveals lots of love between Wyll and the player character. Wyll is kind of old school in his approach to a relationship. I won't spoil it, but there are quite a few sweet surprises, though players who want a more intense, intimate relationship may not feel super enthused about this. For the pacing of Wyll's relationship, I gave it a 4 out of 5. Wyll's romance is much more slowly paced than other romantic relationships in this game. Wyll wants to wait. He wants to make sure the timing is right and that things are right. It really is consistent with his personality, being an individual who is thoughtful, patient, and caring. That being said, if you want the relationship to move more quickly and you don't so much want that slow burn feeling to the relationship, Wyll's romance may not be a great fit. Overall, I gave this romance a 12 out of 15. Next is Karlach. Karlach is a tiefling who can first be recruited in Act 1. Karlach is a powerful barbarian searching for a new life after being freed from Avernus. Karlach is strong-willed and isn't afraid to call it how she sees it, but she's very kind and generous. She can be romanced by a character of any gender and appreciates kindness and compassion. Karlach does not appreciate excessive violence or the player character being insensitive or uncaring to the needs of others. For character depth, I gave Karlach a 5 out of 5. Karlach has been through much adversity and abuse in her life. Despite all that she has faced, Karlach presents herself as very cheerful and optimistic. She also has a great sense of humor and brings some brightness to very challenging moments.
The place? Sleepy little town called Baldur's Gate. Our hero? Karlach, a knock-kneed delinquent from the outer city with everything to give and nothing to lose.
Karlach is highly motivated to forge a new life for herself, where she is in charge and she has control, highlighting her resilience and drive. For the emotional depth of Karlach's relationship, I gave it a 4 out of 5. Despite everything that she's experienced, Karlach is very loving and sweet in her approach to a relationship. She and the character are able to bond over their traumatic and challenging experiences and grow together. Karlach is enthusiastic about pursuing the player character, and she's not shy to let you know that. Karlach's playful nature and, at times, bluntness can make her come off a little immature in the relationship, which may turn some players off. For the pacing of this relationship, I gave it a 4 out of 5. Karlach doesn't hesitate to make it clear how she feels for the player character, making things move at a relatively consistent speed. Karlach's playfulness may strike some players as pushy or a bit too blunt, and that may impact how they feel about the pacing of the relationship. Overall though, the pacing is not bad. Overall, I gave this relationship a 13 out of 15. Next is Astarion. Astarion is an elf rogue companion who can first be encountered in Act 1. Astarion is a vampire spawn who was enslaved by a horrible vampire lord. Astarion wants to gain his freedom and safety and get revenge for what was done to him. Astarion can be romanced by a character of any gender. He has an appreciation for wit as well as cruelty at times. He also very much appreciates when the character shows an understanding and acceptance of him. Astarion does not appreciate kindness without the promise of a reward, and he dislikes acts of charity in general. For character depth, I gave Astarion a 5 out of 5. Externally, Astarion is very charming and eloquent, traits that he has needed to survive his background. On the flip side, his background contributes to some of his other personality traits when he can be distrustful, manipulative, and even prejudiced. Astarion has experienced mistreatment for centuries and had to take care of himself, which has understandably majorly influenced how he views the world and how he views others.
I was a magistrate, working to keep the peace in Baldur's Gate, imprisoning troublemakers, that kind of thing. I can't remember much, truth be told. Centuries of torment will do that to you.
And his perception can be deeply connected to the player character, how they approach the world and situations, as well as how they support him. Astarion is willing to challenge himself and his beliefs and to grow, but he is very much impacted by his environment, and that is an interesting dynamic to see play out. For the emotional depth of Astarion's relationship, I gave it a 5 out of 5. Astarion's relationship is certainly complicated. Astarion has many life experiences that have influenced the way that he views relationships, and that especially includes romantic and intimate relationships. His romance is really widely recognized because of its complexity and the depth of the journey that Astarion and the player can take together. For the pacing of this relationship, I gave it a 4 out of 5. Astarion's romance is a well-paced romance once it is initiated. From what I've read online, some people find it challenging to initiate the relationship and to build Astarion's approval of them. This hasn't been my experience, but it is something that I wanted to throw out there. If you have any issues with building a character's approval, there are many guides online that provide really specific examples of how to do so. Overall, I gave this relationship a 14 out of 15. Next is Lae'zel. Lae'zel is a Githyanki fighter who you will first meet on the Nautiloid in Act 1. Lae'zel is outspoken about her support for the Githyanki and can be very direct in her feelings and opinions. Lae'zel can be romanced by a character of any gender. She appreciates directness in resolving situations and dislikes anything that can appear like showing mercy or showing weakness. For character depth, I gave Lae'zel a 5 out of 5. Lae'zel initially can be quite off-putting. She is very direct about her xenophobic feelings and can be combative with the character and companions. She makes it clear that she views others as below her.
I understand much beyond your comprehension. More to the point, I know the cure for our condition. It is imperative we locate a creche. You do well to observe more and question less.
It's as she explores with the group, gets to know the protagonist, and is exposed to more than she has known in her life, that she begins to change and have a more open opinion. Lae'zel shows that she can evolve and grow, and she learns to see her companions as just that, companions. For the emotional depth of Lae'zel's relationship, I gave it a 5 out of 5. Because of Lae'zel's mindset, her romance with the player is initially one of intimacy only. However, continuing their travels together and confronting challenging situations together, Lae'zel grows. The relationship becomes more close, more emotionally intimate, and a relationship where the two are able to enjoy moments together and be equal and loving. For the pacing of this relationship, I gave it a 4 out of 5. Most video game relationships work from the stage of early attraction to flirtation to dates and then to intimacy/commitment maybe. While Lae'zel's relationship really works in the opposite direction. Lae'zel initially comes off as completely unromantic, but that's entirely the intention. She doesn't want to romance the player at the beginning, and it's only with time, work, building up their relationship, and building up their trust that this changes. Some players might overlook this though, reject her advances, and move forwards. However, by accepting her advances, it can begin a very unique exploration of personal growth and an honestly sweet romance. Overall, I gave this relationship a 14 out of 15. Last but not least is Shadowheart. Shadowheart is a cleric who is devoted to the goddess Shar. Shar is a goddess associated with trickery and death. Shadowheart is encountered early in Baldur's Gate 3 and can be recruited as a companion at numerous points. Shadowheart can be romanced by a character of any gender, and she has an appreciation for wit and clever solutions to problems. She also loves animals. Shadowheart very much dislikes excessive cruelty or aligning oneself with an oppressive group or an oppressive individual. For character depth, I gave Shadowheart a 5 out of 5. There are layers and layers and layers to Shadowheart's character. Her past life and history paint a complicated and detailed picture of who she is, and it's through interactions and experiences together that the player can best learn. Shadowheart has an important connection to the main plot of the game, and she is an influential and interesting character in the story, with or without her romantic relationship. For the emotional depth of Shadowheart's relationship, I gave it a 5 out of 5. Shadowheart's wealth of life experience has made her slow to trust and hesitant to open up. This is a relationship that will take time and work to prove to Shadowheart that the player is well matched and has positive intentions. It is a very rewarding relationship, and it becomes clear how much these characters care for each other and how much they can confide in and support each other. For the pacing of this relationship, I gave it a 4 out of 5. This relationship may develop a bit slower than some players would want. As I said, it takes time to get close, and the relationship can shift throughout the game. That being said, it all feels natural and well-paced, in my opinion. The relationship doesn't feel rushed or pushed aside, and having Shadowheart as a companion throughout the game ensures that you two will see a lot of each other and have a lot of interactions.
You know, I've been catching myself smiling more lately. I think that's your fault.
Overall, I gave this relationship a 14 out of 15. So there you have it. Those are my breakdowns of the main Baldur's Gate 3 romances, talking about their character depth, their emotional depth, their pacing. What are your thoughts? What is your favorite romance in Baldur's Gate 3? Was there any romance that you were surprised by or disappointed by? Let me know in the comments. If you like more content like this, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.